A lot of people just have 5 armies that they've painted up. That's it. Never play with them. Why would you not play with them? No, it's fine. Alrighty, I got my coffee and my notes, and today, it's Sunday today. Normally I do these on a Saturday, but I think crazy busy. So today I'm going to do part 2 of the 3-leg, the Venn diagram part of this hobby, which is going to be painting. So I'm going to sit and just throw a few things out there about, for a lot of people, well, I don't know, for a lot of people, some people love to paint the minis, and some people it's a chore, and some people like just get the paint on them, get them on the table. Other people will sit there and spend 3 days on one figure. And I guess with the old world, that's kind of a difference. So anybody that comes from like a skirmish game environment, there's going to be a big change in the amount of models that you're going to have to paint. I've started on my gobos here, and there's just hundreds of the buggers, because it's rank and flank. You got blocks of 40, especially with goblins and things like that, or Skaven, or any of the armies that are like mass armies. You're going to be painting a crap ton of them. So to get your army playable, I've known some people that they'll start an army and it won't be playable for a year, which I don't have the patience for. So, I guess I go about it a different way, which, I guess we'll get to at the end. So if we go back, the first time I ever encountered painting miniatures was when I was a kid. I got a box of HO scale Waterloo infantrymen. They were plastic from Airfix. And then with them, I got the Airfix paints, the little tiny pots, and the oil paints. Well, they're enamel paints. In the models, weren't that great. They were good for back then. I'm talking, oh my God, late 70s. Anyway, and I sat, but I was way too young, fidgety, and it was hard. That's the thing. So I really didn't get into it. I got half of them painted, and I think I just abandoned it and went out to play and got on my, used to have chopper bikes back then. So, I guess the point I'm trying to make is it was low tech and it was hard. It wasn't low tech for the time, but compared to now, it was low tech and it was difficult. When I finally got, into doing the fantasy stuff and the Dungeons and Dragons stuff, the Dungeons and Dragons stuff was also, if I remember right, there was still a lot of people using the Airfix enamel paints because the models were metal. So, to paint on metal at that time, you had to use oil-based paints. At least we thought we did. And then the other thing about it was they were not very well cast a lot of times. So, there were no sharp corners, sharp edges. Like belts would kind of round into the body. So it was really hard to get a sharp line. So again, they were hard to paint back then. But slowly, and a lot of this was through Games Workshop that, we got the word of it. Suddenly there was acrylic paints, which made it a lot easier to clean up. And then the details got sharper, because they were making the best models at that time. Their details were getting sharper and sharper. So it was easier to get a sharp line, using the edge of your paintbrush on a sharp line. And the paints were easier to use than the runny enamels that just run all over the place. The acrylics were thicker. So, you could do that. They weren't all brilliant. I'm just saying your ability to paint, it was getting easier to paint a model to get the results. On the downside of that, though, was their heavy metal and their cover art was so good. You'd start painting and you'd get so frustrated. You're like, I want to be able to paint like that. They got to look like that. I'm reading my White Dwarf. Look at that army. Why doesn't my army look like that? So although it was getting easier to do and the quality was getting better, the only thing we had to go with was the how to paint instructions on the boxes or in White Dwarf, And they lied because we used to follow those and it would still not turn out anything like what they'd done. So we came to the conclusion that either they're lying or they've done some post-production on that picture.
Games Workshop, why?
Was the, what was in our heads. So then kind of two things happened. I don't know which order they were. It's still all fuzzy. And I didn't put a lot of onus on remembering that stuff back then. But the washes came out and also the internet became available. So you have to imagine, without the internet, a group of people that knew each other and were into this hobby, the best we could ever get was as good as the best painter that we knew in that group, because that's how word got around. Hey, if you do this, try that. So, I mean, there were Games Workshop stores, but I didn't live near one. None of us did. So we couldn't go there to get tips. And, if there was no internet, so you were as good as the best guy you knew, and that was it. Because you'd all get to you'd slowly evolve, or, you'd slowly get better, and maybe someone would leapfrog him, and then you'd all kind of get pulled up that way. But it was very slow going. You just practice and practice and practice, I guess, to try and get better. But as far as different techniques, that was hard. But then, so two things happened. So first, the internet came out where you could go on, chat rooms and forums and get techniques and see how people were doing it with photos. Even if the photos were coming in that fast at that time, but you do it. And then the other point is, and I think these had together, but washes came out. And I remember the first time I used washes, I had a Manticore model, a Games Workshop Manticore model. And I put a wash on the main it had, and it just jumped right out. And I was like, oh my God, this is magic stuff. So then you just went overboard with washes a little. So everything had that wash look. But, as you reined it in and you got better with the technical washing, because it was a new technique, that really helped. So, that'd help you define parts of the model that had so much detail. Your average person is never going to paint those by hand. So the washes helped, So those two things happened where we could look at new techniques from other people that could make, the group of people sitting together better, because someone would learn something from the internet and then slowly teach everybody else if they didn't have internet and that kind of thing. I mean, we're really... The other thing is, with the internet, you got a look in on any new products that were coming out a lot easier from other companies. So, miniature gaming was such a niche thing that they were not going to advertise on the television or on the radio. If you bought hobby magazines, fine, but there weren't that many hobby magazines really. As White Dwarf was the big one for people who played Games Workshop stuff, and yeah, you only had Games Workshop stuff in there. So with the internet, it was kind of like a lookout. Take the blinkers off a little bit, and you start looking in different directions as to hey, look at this. Let's try one of these, whatever it might have been. So it's the internet, and then the better paints, washes. So if we look at it now today, and I know I'm rambling on, this will get to somewhere in a minute, but now we've got things like YouTube. So, there's like the slash shot techniques, and then they brought out contrast paints, and, so I guess the whole point of this is that how hard it is to paint a model, from going back to the beginning of, let's say, when Games Workshop started doing Warhammer and that, to now, the entry level of painting where, there's a magic moment, like they say, when you're painting a model and all of a sudden you're like, that looks good. It might not be as good as on the box, but it looks good. With things like contrast paints and washes and, watching a YouTube how to paint, You know, somebody who's never done it before can impress themselves, which draws them into the hobby a lot easier than back in the day where you're fighting with it and you're just putting a piece of psychedelic something on the table that you just put color on and it didn't turn out the way you thought it was going to. So, and I think that's something Games Workshop work very hard at is, and I watched an interview with somebody, I can't remember, from Games Workshop, but they look at, he called it the hobby trumpet. So you want to get people as they're coming into the funnel, you know, and those products, because they're slowly going to get niched down. And, you know, if they want something that's less profitable for Games Workshop to do because it's a niche, then they can go somewhere else to get it. So I think, you know, but the ease of painting, you know, like I say, there's three legs to this hobby. There's the collecting the miniatures, they got that down pat. The painting part of it, now, you know, I'm not sure how much of they've got so much competition on the paints now, and most people, after they use Citadel at the beginning, will start going off and, you know, finding a different one like Army Painter, Vallejo, you know, there's tons of them. So, but I think their aim is the ease of paint, to get people into the model and into the hobby and make that hobby stick so that people can go, oh, it looks good. Yeah, and off you go. You found a new thing that you like to do. Seems to me. So there's that rambling thing done. So that's you know. Then the next thing is there are a lot of people. I mean, if you go on YouTube, there are tons of people that are so damn good at painting now. The bar has just been going up and up and up, and it's almost like you know, a curve. It's not going up linearly. It's just going crazy stupid, the amount of really good painters out there. You know, and I saw a comment somewhere about, you know, if you took an average painter now with everything, the techniques and the paints that they have now, and took them back, you know, to the first Golden Demons, they'd probably win, because, you know, it's the standard has gone up and up and up and up. So, which is good. I love it. The next part of this should be how many people that play the wargaming actually like doing the painting. I don't know. I remember in our group it used to be about 50-50. 50% of the people love doing the painting, or, you know, enjoyed it enough to want to do it. And 50% saw it as something that they had to do to get the models on the table. And I think for those people especially, you know, the ease of painting has helped. Also the speed of painting. Now, I'm one of those, I don't know, I straddle both groups in that there's days I just want to sit down and I'll paint, and, you know, I'll have something running in the background and I'm happy. There's other times where I want to get an army done, and like the goblins, if it's a mass army, and I look at it and I go, oh God, I don't want to paint this many, because it gets tiresome doing this many night goblins, you know, with a gallon of blue ink or whatever. That's what it seems like for the cloaks. And so, you know, me personally, I have a two-pronged approach at it. What I'll do is, you know, I'll do, you know, like the slappy chop, spray them black, spray them white, and then contrast paints. You know, I'll try and do them well, but, you know, I'll do them table ready, I think is what we used to call them. You know, don't make them look like shit, but don't worry about all the little thingies and stuff. Then when I'm in the mood, once I got the army ready to play and I can play it, if I find myself in the mood to paint, you know, I can go back to that army and then start painting weird details, dry brushing a unit to give it highlights, make it stand out. And, you know, I can do all the intricate painting stuff, but I usually won't do it when I'm painting the model itself. I'll do it afterwards when the army's done, and then just start pulling units off as I feel like. So that way I kind of get the best of both worlds myself. So I guess the discussion part of this video, which is what I'd like to do, so comments, discussion, how many of you think that painting them to a very high degree, are you in that part of the Venn diagram, or painting them to be playable, that part of the Venn diagram? Because that's, again, and do you think if you're going from, a skirmish type game into the old world where you have to, just paint crap tons of them, how willing are you to wait or just paint them fast? Because to me, that's interesting, because I've seen, from years ago all the way up to, well, quite recently, how that's changed. So I think as well is that because the amount of painting, the way the painting standards have gone up, it pushes people that play, let's say, in public at a store or with their friends. They don't want to be the crap painter. It pushes other people to raise their standard, I think. I don't know. I mean, that's a fun discussion. The other thing that's also crazy now that, maybe some of the younger people won't get is the amount of products for miniature painting that's out there is absolutely crazy. I mean, everything from people will sell you a Tupperware container with a sponge in it, call it a wet palette, and mark it up ridiculously. And brushes, the people doing brushes, the amount of paint lines out there. Army Painter have a huge box of all different paints that you'd ever need, ever, for like $500. And I'm like, have we forgot how to make paints? See, that can go too far too. I mean, it's like going to McDonald's every day instead of learning to cook a dinner. Everything.
Stop whining.
I know, old person saying, everything's got too easy. But maybe, maybe there are, I like a good product, but sometimes I'm like, what's this really for? Is it, if I've got 50 different types of green, do I really need 50 types of green? I mean, I can get by with 3 or 4 different types of green easily, and then the rest you can mix. I see the issue where people go, well, if I mix it and then I want to paint another unit, I've got to mix it exactly the same. I get that. So it's better to, okay, I'm going to use this green for everything I do in this army or this unit, but we can mix. The other thing I really like is the availability of mediums. So acrylic mediums. There's that new Noosh thing that's coming out that I got to try. But I use 3 different types of acrylic medium. So one of them is more like for making my own contrast paints. They're not quite as good as the contrast paints because, the Army Quick Paint stuff has got a bunch of different chemicals in it, not just the medium and the pigments, but it does a pretty good job if I want to knock my own kind of contrast paints up. There's the normal acrylic medium, so you can add colors and inks to get, a shade or a color that you haven't got or you think it'd be cool. And you can make enough of them to fill, a small bottle, so you can make your own paint, basically. I know they're never quite as good as the bought paint, but once they're on the model, if you mix them right, and that's kind of a hobby in itself too, is like alchemy. You don't see the difference once it's on the model, so that's kind of a fun thing to do too. But the cost of the medium isn't very much compared to the cost of a little paint pot, and I can make a crap ton of paint pots out of a medium thing that big. So, maybe if people enjoy doing that too, that's a kind of offshoot of the painting hobby, is make your own paints, So I don't know, do scented paints. Hope I haven't given Gwyneth Paltrow any ideas. So another part of painting the miniature, within the hobby Venn diagram thing, is the style of painting, how you paint them. So a lot of people, I guess, and this is true for me, stuck in my mind, but a different time period, is the box cover art, the heavy metal painting style. which definitely isn't the easiest to learn on, but it's something we strive toward. It's like we want to have, the Games Workshop magazine picture on our model. And so, like, my gobos, night goblins, I didn't do them black. I hate the black on the night gobos, but I didn't blue. But I found I'm still doing the red handles from the 90s or 2000s? Red handles, red bows, because I don't know, somehow it just gets wedged in. And I've tried doing realistically, painting them to a realistic kind of wood and all that, and they just don't feel the same for some reason. So I gave up and just went back to the red wood handles and that kind of thing. But I think, we get into, this is what it's got to look like, this is what I'm going to strive towards. And it just makes me wonder, is there a style of painting? And I think maybe that comes off the army that you're looking at. So, if you're going to do a demon army, you can paint those really as weird as you like, and they'd still look good and still kind of fit into, what the game's supposed to look like. And the same with, I did a small wood elf army once, and I painted those realistically, and they look really good, but I stuck like flock on their cloaks, so they were camoed up as anything. You couldn't even really see that they were elves. They were just like camouflaged, snipery things. And when you got in close, they were good. But when they're on the table, they just look like bushes. An aspect of painting miniatures that maybe, I don't know, that other people have addressed. When I see people like Ninjon and that, who is a really good painter, and I love watching his videos, and he gets in there and he does the light coming from here and he does all this stuff, which is really good. He also does the paint and fast guides, which is the ones that I pay more attention to. But when it is on the table, most of that detail, no one's going to see. I am so, I'm this far away from the model. That's even when I'm up close. And really what it boils down to is where the eye goes. So it's the faces, shields, weapons. That's, the boots, no. Belt pouches, not important, really, because it gets lost in the mix. So I could sit there and, add another 3 stages to this one model, getting those things. I'm not going to do it. At least not on the first pass. I will get, I'll do the blue cloaks, I'll do the skin, like on these guys here. I'll do the skin, the blue cloaks, and both of those are contrast paints. I can go in and highlight them later if I want. Red spears and metal spear tips, and then the shields. Probably take the longest, but it's a focal point. So there you go. Now, I don't do his feet different. I don't do these little pouches and everything. I don't do his little rope belt. None of that, because when I put it back here in the unit, I'm never going to see them at this distance or further. Now, I will go back and do them later, put on some music once his army's ready and I can play. I'll put some music on one night maybe, and I'll pull one of these units off and I'll grab my paintbrush and I'll start doing details and I'll start doing fancy highlights. And over time, they'll get better and better. I hope. So I guess another thing when I'm painting, what I'm really conscious of is, don't overthink it. They used to say don't paint the boots a long time ago. I don't know if people still do. They used to, don't paint the boots. Doesn't mean don't paint them at all. It just means don't. It's a way of saying don't fret about the little things you can't see on the table, or you don't, And if somebody walks out, if you're playing someone, they come out and go, "Oh, his belt pouch isn't painted." don't play that person because they will not be fun to play against. But anyway, that's the second part of this hobby. A lot of people play this hobby just because they like painting the miniatures. They don't give a crap about the game as much. They'll collect them. Some people don't even play. Some people collect the models, they'll paint the models, they display the models. That's it. They don't play. I don't know. And that's fine. It's awesome. A lot of people just have 5 armies that they've painted up. That's it. Never play with them. Why would you not play with them? No, it's fine. Alrighty, that's it for this video. We'll see how it comes out after the edit. And thank you very much for watching. I have had some more subscribers, which honestly I didn't think I'd get hardly any. I just do this for prosperity or whatever, or for whoever out there is interested in this kind of rambling. But you know, when you get some, it is kind of a dopamine hit, you know, so vanity is my favorite sin. So thank you very much, and
like and subscribe, or the Inquisition will come pay you a little visit.